Tell the story? If you don't mind, please.
I told it to her so many times. Anyhow, how many have heard? Please be honest. You are in the presence of God. How many have honestly, earnestly, before God, never heard?
I'm going to ask them.
Anyways, I don't even remember the year, but I was traveling in America and I was alone. And at first I was hitchhiking, and then some devotees I was meeting in Meadville, Pennsylvania, they felt sorry for me, and they gave me an old used station wagon. And then gradually somebody gave me a used van. So I was going from place to place, mostly in Ohio, in Pennsylvania. And I would come back to New Vrindavan maybe 1 or 2 days a month for about 8 years. I left New Vrindavan in 1979. And I was just traveling like that. And one time I was just stopping through. It was like late afternoon. And I was, one of my dear God brothers, Advaita Acharya Prabhu, he's the one who actually got the Bhakti Center. He's the one who found and got this building originally. And he's the one who owned the building at Greenpoint where Radha Murlidhar lived. So he had an apartment building in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and Kattabata Prabhu gave a very accurate graphic description of that neighborhood. It was really dangerous and extremely polluted. Like, you know, in a scale of pollution in New York, that was very high up. And he had a storefront. And somehow or other, after some years, it became free of the lease. And he made some arrangement that Radha Murlidhar be brought to the storefront at Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Now, he lived in an apartment with his family, and there were some other apartments he was renting out. And whenever I'd come to New York, literally, we had underground programs. They were always in the basement. There was no windows. And the devotees would be crowded in the basement. There was no ventilation, obviously no air conditioning. And yet we would have ecstatic programs and everything. So that was Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So one time I'm just stopping through, just on my way between places, and I was told that Radha Murlidhar needs to be brought to Greenpoint today. So I was told, asked, I don't remember, but I was to drive them. It's a van. I was sleeping in the van 7 days a week practically, traveling. So we made a little bed in the back, and then we made like a seat belt. We tied them back on this nice bed, and Srimati Radharani is laying there, Murlidhar's laying there, and I had no Sankirtan party, it was just me, so I started driving. And I was so afraid of making a mistake that the fear of making a mistake kept me totally awake the whole drive. How many hours is it?
8 hours.
Yeah, so I drove 8 hours. And I arrived in Greenpoint around midnight. And I parked in front. And I knocked on the door. Nobody answered. And you can't leave anything in a car. It's not like maybe, it's like for sure. And there were no cell phones. And I didn't know where a phone booth was. It may have been a couple blocks away, I didn't know. But I couldn't leave the deities alone in the van. Because if somebody were to break in and they saw marble statues, they would definitely steal them. So I had little pieces of cloth that were like curtains to block the windows, and I just sat beneath the deities, chanting serenades to them until somebody came out of the building. It was the middle of the night. And about a half hour later, I couldn't see outside, but I could hear. Suddenly, there was a gang who were breaking in all the cars. And I heard them, "Let's get this van." And they pushed something where the key was and then pulled it out to get the door to open. So the door was opening in the front. And I'm sitting there with Radha Murlidhar. I was praying to them, "Please give me the intelligence to protect you." They're outside. And just as the door was opening in the front, they couldn't see behind the curtain. I was literally desperate, crying, "Please, Radha Murlidhar, let me give my life to protect you." And then suddenly, it wasn't like I thought of it. Suddenly, I started barking like a dog. I didn't figure it out. I just started barking. And I really sounded ferocious. I'm just a little I was just a little Swami, sitting in my van, and the noise coming out of my mouth was. And while this barking was going on, my fists were hitting the floor of the van like. And the whole van was kind of shaking like this dog was jumping. And outside, this gang of thieves, I heard them say, "There's a mad dog in there." So they said, let's go to the next car. So they left. And I was, I was just thanking Radha Murlidhar for protecting themselves in this way. And then about an hour later, another gang came, a different one. And they were, because the door was already broken, so they were, they were talking and they were just about to come in, and I did the same thing. Or I didn't do it, but I guess Krishna was dovetailing some propensities. But then around 7:30 in the morning, we were there for about 8 hours. Radha Murlidhar was laying in the back of the van in Greenpoint, and then Advaita came out of it and saw the van there, and he said, "Why didn't you call me?" And that's how they came to New York City. Shri Radha Murlidhar ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.